Really appreciate it. This is kind of a follow-up session for uh, the session that we have for Flexi. The previous session was recorded and turned over to the state to review. We went through the full review demo for the Flexi session. Then we found out that there is many questions, comments, and asking for many scenarios from Natalie and the state team that we felt that we would like to have a follow-up session uh, to respond to those questions. And this is why we scheduled this session today. As if you don't mind, as part of this process, to fill out the survey that are provided as part of the invitation. We would really appreciate that. That has been requested by OMS. The questions that were submitted they will be reviewed during the session today. Is there any questions?
Just one quick question, Mohammed.
Yeah.
The attachment to the invitation we got, it said
Mhm.
that it was your responses to the state's questions.
Mhm.
It doesn't have any of the questions we'll be going over today, does it? I didn't see my name in the file. I just
We
wanted to confirm that.
Right. We are gonna for the some of the written questions we are gonna respond those in writing.
Oh, very good.
Yes, and we after the afterward we are gonna respond to all the questions that we did not answer during the demos or during this session. We are gonna respond in writing, and we are gonna send those document to Roger and Rick, and he's going to forward those to the attendees.
Very good.
Okay. Next slide, please. This is kind of the team members who are engaged. They are familiar faces. Chuck already kind of introduced Tom as an ex-neighbor to us, and Tammy Pierce. She's a senior manager with the service delivery with the DDI team as well. And the remaining team members has been already introduced from the previous demo session. Next slide. Okay, Tom, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mohammed.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn off my camera just for bandwidth issues. But can everybody hear me okay?
We
Yes.
can.
All right, great. So I think you saw this slide last week, so we don't need to spend a whole lot of time here. Really, the purpose of today's call is to go over, I believe there were 11 questions that you had, Natalie, and then I think 3 parking lot questions that were taken during last week's meeting. So in total, we got 14 questions to go over. We've got some that we'll be able to demo, some will just be open dialogue. We've got about 80 minutes left. I don't think we need all of that time. So I encourage you to kind of just, if you have a question, speak up and we can have open dialogue around all these questions if that works for you guys. So I'm going to be doing the talking. Paul is going to be doing the driving. So Paul, if you can actually, let's go to the next slide real quick. I apologize. Let's just go right into the questions, unless anyone had any questions about the new enhancements, which I don't think you do. We're going to jump right into the questions. So here are the first 6 questions. And I'm going to read each question before we kind of talk about them, because we're going to go away from this PowerPoint deck and we're actually going to jump into Flexi application. So before we go into that discussion or that demo, I'll revisit that question if that works for everybody. So question number one, and while I'm reading this one, Paul, if you want to bring up your
Okay.
screen, is the ability to populate batch description and upload template for Flexi AP invoices manually processed. And the answer to that is yes. We can certainly add that column. And Paul is going to pull up a sample file. And I've got two here. I've got an AP sample and an AR sample. This is for one of our other customers. We don't have batch description in one of these columns, but we can very easily add it, right? So we'll do that during the DDI phase, work with you guys and, configure what this template will look like for you. But it'll be very similar to this. You got your, we call it payee ID, but you'll know it as vendor ID, your type, your reason code if you so wish, your fund code, or you could think of that as appropriation, your FFYQ. But this is where, all of this should look pretty familiar to you, but this is where we could certainly add a column for batch description. That's no problem at all. So any questions on an AP template and the ability to add a batch description?
No.
Great.
That's great.
All right, moving on to number two, vendor code payment method, right? So for those that maybe don't know, that is, whether a provider, a vendor is either a check or EFT or in some cases IGT. And the answer there is yes, we can do it more frequently. We just need to schedule that package, right? That vendor package that typically just runs once a week. We just need to run that nightly if that's what you guys would like to do. That's certainly no problem. So every time we run that package, it's pulling the latest and greatest payment method from our claims engine, right? Health Pass Administrator. So whatever's in that field, whether it's check, EFT, IGT, if they changed their address or if they changed from Key Bank to Bank of America, whatever that change may be, as soon as you run that package, we pull it in, we ingest it into Flexi. Right now, that schedule is set up for once a week, but if you guys want to increase that frequency, that's certainly not a problem. We'll just schedule it to run at say 11 p.m. every night. That package goes pretty quick. We're talking less than 5 or 10 minutes to run that package. So that's no problem.
I have a question on that one.
Sure.
Okay, how are providers paid? Basically, the file goes to our accounting system.
Sure.
And everything has to be in there. So that's how the payment is really divvied out through the
Sure.
treasury. I don't get the sync between, our system and the accounting system. I mean, I know that there's data in there, but if the two don't agree, how does it mess up the payment?
So
Or
is the
does it?
No, so we always want Flexi to be in sync
Right.
with Advantage Main, right? But on our side, we've got two independent products, right? So we've got our claims engine, which stores, this kind of the source of truth for us in terms of
Right.
provider information, right? So anytime there's a change, it happens there first before it gets to Flexi. So right now, when we run a payment cycle, one of our packages, that vendor package, and what it does is it's looking for any new provider or any
Okay.
changes to an existing provider. And when it finds it, it pulls it into Flexi and
Okay.
makes that update, right? So
Okay.
then step two is we need Flexi to be in sync with your accounting system, which
Right.
happens, with the payment file that happens weekly. But, and Natalie, let me know if I'm going down the wrong path, but I think you're asking, can we basically get Flexi updated more frequently than once a week?
That's right. Yeah. And I was actually going to ask you guys what day of the week it's currently scheduled on. But just to kind of answer Chuck's question a little bit more, Chuck, when the GACS file is created, if a provider is EFT, they actually, or if Flexi believes a provider is EFT, right? Then it actually populates the disbursement with
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
with a code. And when it processes into Flexi, when it processes into Advantage, if Advantage does not have the provider listed as EFT, the payment rejects.
Got it. Okay.
So, yeah. So that's the vast majority of the rejections we currently have now. If there's any rejections in the cycle, it's very rare that it's anything other than the fact that the vendor is not eligible under EFT.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So we're trying to address that because right now it takes like 2 days, I think is what we had originally identified, that it takes 2 days after the vendor's EFT is turned off in Advantage to get it into Flexi. So we were just looking at it, with this upgrade, is there the opportunity to do that a little bit more often so that we can gain an extra day, basically,
Yep.
on the process. It still could happen, right? Like if we turn it off on a Wednesday,
Yep.
there's no time, right? And probably if we turn it off on a Tuesday, there's also probably not a lot of time there either. So we would go from having, 3 days to just 2, which might help us a little bit.
Okay.
And certainly doable. And I think you had one other question in there, Natalie, as far as when it runs today. I thought, or at least when I left supporting Maine, it was running on Friday. But Paula, you can correct me if I'm wrong. That vendor package, is that running still on Friday, or is it run on Thursday?
The package runs on Friday.
Friday. Okay.
The SSIS does.
And we can certainly increase the frequency. Like I said, it can run nightly. There's no harm in running it nightly, right? Like I said, it's not a long running job. So if we want to do that, that's no problem.
Yeah, and I think that one of the reasons is, with the legacy system, those processes take a little longer than what we're seeing for performance in the new system. So it was a scheduling, I think, more than anything, trying to fit that in somewhere, right? But with the new systems, it's night and day. When I go into Ohio and see them doing things, it's like boom, boom, boom. It just happens. So yeah, I
in
think
terms
that'll
of
be a big
performance,
difference. Big difference.
performance is certainly drastically different, right? We've got 10x the number of providers in some of our other accounts, and this vendor package, like I said, usually runs in about 5 minutes. So, okay, I think we've beat that one to death. So number 2, I think everyone's comfortable. So moving to number 3, ability to cap cycles by priority and account. I think you already do by priority, but we'll show you how to cap by account. So Flexi selects for payment. Natalie, you're very familiar with it. There's new parameters that allow you to do some capping based off of appropriation, or I'll just say account code. And we're going to show you that here with a live demo. So Paula, once you get your screen share up, if you could pull up selection for payment, and we're going to run selection for payment twice. We're going to run it once wide open, and this is obviously small scale demo environment. We're just going to do it on one provider, and we're going to run selection for payment twice. We're going to run it once wide open so you can see all of the payments. I think they have 3, and then we're going to go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, not to get you off track here, but I just kind of wanted to clarify that question.
Okay.
I know that currently Flexi, has the ability to cap by priority. We've done some demoing on that in the current system. I'm assuming the upgrade won't lose that ability,
Correct.
maybe even enhance it a little bit, maybe. But and we haven't actually used it yet. So that's another thing, like it's not really in production yet, because we haven't really ever done it. But the question was actually around, we have capped cycles by account. And I am curious for you guys to do this demo, because I've actually never seen what the system does when you cap by account. And I don't know if, in the current system, if it's a little bit more labor intensive in terms of manually, running claims and then seeing how much is in there and then running more claims and stuff like that. Or if it's more automated in the new system. But just to kind of throw out there, the question was actually more around the ability to cap cycles by priority and account.
Got it.
So both together.
Yep. Okay.
So I don't know if that's what you were going to demo here, or if you were just demoing the cap by account.
I was going to do the account because I thought you were already good with priority, but we can still talk about it. But I mean, our other accounts do it by priority and account, so it's certainly no problem.
You mean like a hybrid?
Yeah.
Of
Well,
the two?
yeah. Well, it's all built based off of your groupings, right? So you have your priority groupings, right? And it goes top to bottom, right? So if I've got 10 groupings, right? And West Virginia is a good example. West Virginia does this because they don't fund 100% of their claim volume each week, right? They fund a subset of that, right? And
Oh.
it's based off of priority, right? So they may fund all of their state hospitals in group 1, but then long-term care, maybe they only fund, you know, $2 million a week, for example, right? And when those funds are gone, right, everything else gets, you know, paid the following week. So that's
Oh, interesting. Okay.
certainly no problem. Yeah, that's one of
Oh,
our rare
very
accounts
cool.
that don't pay 100% every single week. But yeah, let me show you this, and then if you have more questions, we can maybe kind of walk through it a little bit more.
Great.
So if you want to grab a new skeleton, Paula, just grab the typical. Oh, sorry, just click the copy button.
Can
I
you guys
apologize.
see my screen?
Sure.
Okay, just want to make sure.
We can. You can X out of this tab, Paula, and
Oh,
go back to your other tab, your selection for payment, and then just hit the copy button. And let's select the
Right.
typical. And let's just double check. I think we just have this looking at one provider right now, but double click into the group, please. And let's just double check. Yep.
Yep.
Yep. So there's our demo provider there. So let's go ahead. This is only going to take a second or two. Go ahead and process that.
3 remittances for group 1.
All
This
right. And
being group 1.
can you just do payment review real quick? And then details of all down at the bottom there. And then one more button, payment details.
Oh, I forgot to.
Okay,
I
you're
did
good.
it on the last screen.
You're good. So
I
what this
gotta
is simulating
highlight it
is
to go
when
to it.
we ran it wide open, right, it picked up 3 invoices, all funded the same way. There's a $50,000 invoice, a $1,000 invoice, and a $500 invoice, right? So just wanted to kind of point that out, all with the same accounting details. So go ahead and X out of that tab or the last couple tabs, and we're going to unprocess this. Excuse me. All right, go ahead and unprocess. And now let's close this out and let's open up a new payment skeleton. And we're going to select our demo payment skeleton, right? So once we understand what you guys want to do, we can build a skeleton for you that you can select. So this is a demo skeleton of our payment limit. So if you want to just double click into that, let's kind of just walk through what this looks like. So these groupings are all sequential, right? So we only have one grouping right now, and we're only looking at, and these are basically, think of them as and statements. Like for those that are SQL savvy, think of these two groupings right here as an and statement. So this group is looking for anybody with a vendor code of that and an account mask that contains 140508. So think of that as like maybe an appropriation, right? And you see up above, we've got a payment limit of $1,100. So this is saying, grab this vendor, grab all of the accounts for this appropriation, but you can pay no more than $1,100. And remember, when we looked at it a few seconds ago, we picked up about $50,000. So go ahead and process this. And my expectation is it's only going to pick up that one invoice for $1,000. And yep, sure enough, it did. Close this and let's look at the payment review and payment details. So it didn't pick up the other two invoices because it didn't meet the condition, right? It didn't, the $50,000 invoice exceeded the payment limit, as did the $500 invoice, right? But notice it didn't pick up the $500 invoice because we try to max out that payment limit, right? So we could have, Flexi could have decided to pay $500 because that's certainly less than our $1,100 limit, but there was a $1,000 invoice in there, which obviously is greater, and we try to maximize. We try to pay as much as we can up to that payment limit. So that is why it selected this invoice for $1,000, and it did not pick up anything else. Now, if I was to have a secondary group, go ahead and let's go back to the payment skeleton or the PCN summary there. If I was to add another group, right? So think of this, line 1 could be all your hospital providers, right? And we could group them that way. And if you wanted to put a limit of $10 million or $15 million, you could do so, right? And inside the group, right? If you double click into the group, Paula, please, you've got a payment limit here, right? And this payment limit controls this group and this group only, right? Now, if I was to add a group 2, I could put in another rule to pick up maybe all pharmacy providers with a X limit, right? Or pharmacy providers with this account code and this limit. So you have all kinds of options, right? But the payment limit here, I want to call out, is a limit for this group. Now, if you X out of this and select the payment limit to the left, Paula. So there's your check limit. That's your notch limitation. But that payment limit, now you're talking PCN limit. So if I was to put a number right there, I don't want to exceed $20 million for this PCN. That's where you would enter your payment limit right there. And that would control the totality of all your groups down below. Does that make sense?
I think so, yeah, and I can see that little checkbox there, allow partial pay. Yeah, that would definitely not be something we would check because we definitely don't want invoices to pay in part.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. And then you have a payment limit amount, and that's the net PCN. Did you say, Tom?
Correct.
Inclusive of anything that we would net against the payment.
Correct. Correct.
Interesting. But the check limit for that max but the other option that you had before where you were
Group, yeah.
saying, by account only pay
Yep.
$1,000.
Yep.
Was that only for payables?
Well, so right now, go back into that real quick, Paula, double click in there. So we do not have any, with this PCN run, you can see that net receivables and credit memos was unchecked. But if you were to include those, it would be inclusive, right? So it's still we would do netting, but it would say, okay, do your netting, but you can still only pay $1,100.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Because the priority grouping, that we kind of have in place right now, and kind of the process that was assigned, it was my understanding that we're actually kind of trying to pay a certain percentage of only the payables. And there wasn't really the option to say also net the receivables and then give us that too. But here it looks like there might be more options. And I don't want to spend like a lot of time on this because this is only a demo.
Correct.
The state is still analyzing, what we're actually going to do. But this would be very interesting to go into more depth on, if we do go into DDI and, start to look at some of that in a little bit more detail. But this is pretty cool.
Sure, sure. And like I said, West Virginia, they
Cool.
they follow that prompt pay to a T. You know, how you have to like 90% of claims within I forget the timeline, 7 days, 95% within 14 days, pay 99% within 21 days, and pay 100% within 30 days. Whatever those guidelines are, West Virginia basically follows that to a T, right? And they defer payment. So just because a claim comes in this week does not necessarily mean it's going to get paid this week, and oftentimes it doesn't. It'll get paid the following week.
Right. And this is still an aging, right? Like this is
Mhm.
this is still paying, the oldest claim
Correct.
and then kind of going up from
Correct.
there. Does it attempt, so this one is based on vendor code specifically.
Yes.
But they probably have other ones that just say for this group, right?
Yeah.
And not any specific vendor code, but for group one, pay, this amount,
Yep.
of any claim that contains this appropriation. And if you do it that way and not by vendor code, does it still kind of do aging, but just kind of groups all the vendors? And
Yes.
so the vendors who have the oldest claims, if say one vendor out of the group had all the oldest claims, right, that vendor would get paid all their claims basically, and then it just kind of goes up
Correct.
from there. Okay, that's what I was wondering about, was kind of like how it decides like how much each vendor gets. So it's not really like a percentage of every vendor's payment,
Right.
it's oldest, which
Yes.
is, which would make sense because, if a provider just submitted a claim, you know, they can't necessarily always expect to receive that claim in the
Exactly.
next week, which
got
would
it.
make sense. But they would still be in compliance with that prompt pay, right? So they can expect it
Right.
within this number of days, right?
Exactly. You
Which
got it.
is which is neat.
And
Okay.
we also, for the claims reso piece, they also follow prompt pay rules. You know, the 90% within 30 days, the 99 within 90. Yep.
Yep, very good. Very good.
All right. Any other questions on question number 3? All right, moving on. Question number 4.
Yeah, very interesting.
Possible connection of reversal and adjustment claim invoices. Nothing to demo here. And just a discussion, Natalie. We don't have anything like this at this time to kind of, Flexi to guarantee that the reversal ID nets with the adjustment claim ID. Flexi is just attempting to net all the credit memos, all the ARs, regardless of invoice ID, if that makes sense. There's no linkage of that invoice ID. We do ensure that the reversal and adjustment come in at the same time, but there's no way to kind of guarantee that those, I'll call them sister records, net together.
Right, right. So if they were to come in as credit memo, so if the reversal claims were to come in as credit memos, so here's a question. And you had all of these claims. Those adjustments and reversals, right? They would technically be the oldest claims, right? Or would
Technically,
they not?
unless, well, I'll say one scenario where it wouldn't, right? And that would be, say the previous week, the provider was in a credit balance. So they had more
Yes.
reversal claims than paid claims. So there'd be some reversal claims out there that are still sitting in a quote unquote credit balance.
Yeah.
Those in theory would be older than the claims that just came
Yes.
in this week, right? So
Right.
that's where you get a scenario where, okay, I have $100 adjustment and $100 reversal that came in this week, but I've got a $500 credit memo sitting out there from last week, right? So
Yeah.
that's where, and maybe math, bad example there, but maybe say it was a $50 receivable from last week. In that case, that $50 credit memo might net with the adjustment from today. So that's where I see that kind of going a little bit sideways, right? Because that's where the aging plays a factor. And if you have some providers who are in a credit balance, which we know happens on occasion,
Right.
those are going to get net first.
Got it. Okay. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. And I guess this is more a question about how Flexi loads, and this could definitely be a DDI question as well, if we don't answer it here. But like when a reversal and an adjustment flow into Flexi, is there any guarantee that they kind of flow sequentially? Meaning like the reversal and the adjustment would kind of flow in kind of next to each other into Flexi in terms of aging,
Yeah, and that's
so
how
they'd at
it's
least be
supposed.
close.
Yeah, and it's really not a flexi function. It's really it's a core claims function, right? So when there is an adjustment, because we know that when you create an adjustment, the reversal, there's nothing really for the reversal to do. The reversal gets created and it sits, and there might be others on the phone that can answer this better than me, but I'll give it my best shot. The reversal claim sits in what we call like a rev sync status, because the
Yes.
adjustment claim has to go through adjudication, right?
Right.
And needs
Yep.
to get and it could get held up. It might hit an edit or append or what have you.
Yep.
So that reversal is how the core claims engine is working, is the reversal should stay in that rev sync status until the sister record, the adjustment claim, passes through adjudication and prices and ends in a pay status, or it could be a
Right.
deny status. And then the two marry, and then they're in the status that they should be, which is pay and rev, until we
Right.
get to run fee for service, which loads them to wait pay and wait rev. So there are checkpoints to kind of make sure, but that's not to say there aren't, let's say the adjustment fails to fund allocate. Maybe it misses a rule, right? We miss something and the reversal flows in because
Oh,
that
right.
just,
Right. Yeah.
so there are scenarios where it may not come in at the same time, but there certainly, more often than not, it should come in the door at the same exact time for federal reporting reasons.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think I was getting more uh, into kind of the process. So like when it loads them into Flexi and actually creates invoices, right? It's creating them one at a time, right?
Right.
So I was kind of thinking, if they both come through, and there's no other hiccups in that, would it kind of create that reversal credit memo and then immediately after that create its adjustment, or the other way around. And I don't know if that's a guarantee, if that's anything that that the process would guarantee, I guess. So that they're kind of linked in that they are, when you age them, they're like right next to each other. But that's not really that big of a deal. I was just curious. What Tom, what did you call the when you were doing the priority screen there, what did you call that typical grouping there? Was it just a group?
The typical PCN.
Yeah.
So,
What
so
did
we,
you
I mean,
call it? What is
that's a good
that?
question. So
When
we've
you do the
got
drop down, what's it
our,
called?
the groupings. So you have
It's
your
just
payment.
called a grouping.
Yeah, so
Okay.
you have your payment groupings, and then you can, drill it. You can create 2 groupings or 50 groupings, right? I think West
Yeah.
Virginia
So
has like
groupings
12
can be
groupings.
customized,
100%.
basically,
Yep,
to
100%.
that level, of adding additional pieces, which might include even a count string within those groupings. So that actually perfectly answers that question, Tom. Thank you very much.
I think you answered it yourself, but you're most welcome. And there is flexibility. So we have those, payment skeletons, which is not new to you, which are kind of, just think of them as, you pre-bake your PCN, you know what you're going to select. But if you were up against fiscal year end, right, you have the ability, as we're running selection for payment, you can add a group, right? So you say you have $50 million to play with, and you've got your 12 groupings, and you've only spent 48 million, right? You can add another group, and it's not like you're locked into that payment skeleton. You have total control during the selection for payment process, right? As long as we don't move forward to payment production, process payment, right? We're on that step 1 of selection for payment. You can, unprocess like you saw us do, or you can add new groupings, right? So you have full control over that, to make last minute changes if you need to.
Yeah, and that essentially gives you the ability to do what if scenarios. What if we do this? What does it do? Process it, take a look at it, and then unprocess.
Yep. That first step is kind of, just gives you a level of assurance of what I'm picking up, what am I paying, and is this truly what I want, right? And if it is, great, move forward. But if not, unprocess it, and you're back to square one. And it's usually pretty quick.
Very good. Awesome.
All right. I think that answers question number 4. Question number 5, Paul, if you want to grab the ball again.
Yeah.
Question number 5 is ability to enlarge text on screen. So Flexi does not have this ability, but we do have the ability with a Windows setting. So we can configure that. Everyone can configure theirs differently. It's either a Citrix setting or through your server setting. But I know you guys, correct me if I'm wrong, you're accessing Flexi through Citrix. So it is a setting where you can enlarge text. And Paula's going to demo that right now as soon as she grabs the ball.
Oh, I don't know why I'm having to do this twice. Sorry about that. Okay.
I do have to be honest here. I'm not sure why I wrote that question. I'm not 100% sure. I'm thinking it might have had to do with a little issue we have currently, which is that if your system setting is set to like 125 percent,
Mhm.
so the things on your desktop, right, are a little bit larger.
Sure.
When you open Flexi, it will not center the application within the window. So you've got like
Gotcha.
a black kind of like spot in the window, and everything's kind of shifted either, I think it's to the left. And you have to change your system setting in order to see the screen the way it's supposed to be seen, which is centered. You have to change it to 100%.
Got it.
And I think that question was answered in one of the other demos. It was
Okay.
answered as that won't be an issue anymore
Okay.
with the new upgrade. I believe that was the answer. So I think that's where I was going with that question, but I'm happy to see how to enlarge
Yeah.
the screen.
And
I do have some people with some vision impairment. So
sure. And I suspect the 125 versus 100 has something to do with QNext, right?
Yeah,
Like
it's
Unix, yeah,
it's
you have to
everything.
have,
It's
yeah,
QNX, it's Flexi, it's all the applications.
right, right.
If it's at that 125, it doesn't work.
Okay. And so in here, if you did need to enlarge any text, because that's essentially we were looking at, okay, how do we make, if we have a screen open here, how do we make it look bigger, right?
Yeah.
And so what we did was we went into here, into our settings. Let me just go back so you can see where I am, right?
Oh, okay. Yep.
You go to your Windows settings,
Just Windows.
and ease of access has a magnifier. And that's where we went. We activated the magnifier. And oh, that's why I'm getting the tracking. That was making, it's still doing it. I don't know. Anyway, we activated that, and as you can see, here's the magnifier. And then you can start zooming in and zooming out, right? So we have it set to increment by 50%. So, and you can leave it up here if you want, whatever you want to do. You can go back to the, options here and do all sorts of things. Anyway, but you saw
Okay.
it got bigger. But again, to your point, you're going to have to, sort of move your screen around. I don't know if I can grab it here.
Yeah. Are you
But
able to
anyway,
move
yeah.
it from here, or are you able to like drag or something, or do you have to move?
I think
Yeah.
'cause she's
man, it's
sharing,
really
it's not,
annoying.
yesterday when
Yeah,
you
it's
were
not
doing it.
letting me, it did, yeah. When I wasn't sharing, it was letting me go all over the place with this
Okay, that's
and
fine. That's fine.
move
Okay.
the window so that you could, look at something. Right now it's, let me go back down. And like if I opened
Okay.
the advanced selection again, and you wanted to see, let's say you wanted to see the typical, right? And this is small. Now, see, it's getting bigger. So this is what allows you to, it doesn't affect the actual text on the screen, but rather it zooms in, allows you to zoom in.
Okay. All right. That's fine. Yeah. Yeah. I think it was probably more around that 100% that I was asking about that, but that's an interesting option there. I'll certainly see if I can let some other people know about that, but okay, great.
Awesome.
We,
All right,
we don't spend too much more time on that.
great. Last question on AP is UI query capability. So Natalie, I know there's some applications where you can actually pull up like a SQL statement. Is that what you're after with this question, or was it? I just want to make sure I'm answering this thoroughly.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was just kind of what kind of capability might we have through the UI itself, right? To
Yeah,
actually query or, to create a report or anything like that, if there was anything. You guys have gone through View 360, and kind of how that works in the previous demo, and how the application kind of lays on top, and for information that you might get in QNext, there's some integration into what lives in Flexi for that same provider or for that claim. So that's really, really cool, really interesting. We were actually thinking recently about providing, giving our provider relations staff access to Flexi, because they can't see a lot of stuff in QNext. But with this View 360, I think it's going to kind of lay on top and provide them, I think, with what they might need
great.
from Flexi, and they wouldn't even have to go in there, which is great. But yeah, just kind of if there's any demo of kind of ability to query or different things, if it's pretty similar to what already exists in Flexi right now, I don't think
It's
we
the
need to
same.
demo anything
Yeah,
on that. Just if it's just what kind of already exists, then yeah, we can
Yeah,
just go from there.
from a query perspective, it's the same.
Yeah.
I mean, there's new reports obviously, and
Yeah,
maybe
sure.
some new query functionality, but it's the same functionality. And then obviously behind it is where we have our SQL Server, which I know you and a few others
Yeah.
probably have access to. But
Yes.
that's where we do a lot of our querying.
Very good. Thank you. And
No
that
problem.
likely would still be available.
Yes.
This
Yep.
is just an upgrade, so
Correct.
very good.
Yep. Awesome. I think that answers all the accounts payable questions. So we'll move on to the account receivable questions. Question 1 is ability to upload data via template to create AR invoices. So Paul, if you could pull up that template we were looking at earlier on the AP side, we have a similar template for ARs. And again, fully configurable, but we'll show you a sample of what one of our other customer uses to import, dozens or
Can you see?
hundreds of ARs. Not yet, Paula.
Okay,
Coming
do
up
you see it
now.
now?
We see it now. So here's the template, or really it's a data file. It's a sample file with, again, your pay ID, AKA the vendor code or customer ID. And then, some fields that probably look familiar to you, your reason code, your fund code, or, that could be your appropriation, your FFYQ, your dollar amount, for ARs, very important. When is it effective? When do I want to start recouping it? And are there any payment terms? Is there a payment plan? Right. So all of these are fields. You populate this field and you import it directly into Flexi. And when those AR invoices are effective in terms of the date on this file, that's when those AR invoices will become effective in Flexi. So just a shortcut, that way you don't have to, manually key 50 or 100 AR invoices. You just create the file and upload it.
Very good. And this upload template is also customizable, similar to
Yes.
the AP template.
Correct.
So if there is anything that is not on here that we typically enter, we could have it added.
Yeah. Yep. And we'll just flush that out
Excellent.
during the DDI phase if
The
you want to
the
add
DDI
anything
phase.
else. Yep. You got it.
Yes. Okay. Fantastic. That's
Very
great. Yeah, because there were some things, that we had wanted for a while, but they kind of, I believe they needed a Flexi upgrade in order to actually do them, because we were on such an old version
Right.
that even the Flexi vendor, would not be able to patch to allow us to add anything into them now. So, but this is very cool, because we definitely have reason codes that were not available originally, and that was a big one that pretty much did not allow us to actually use the upload. And then, of course, we have descriptions that we would want to add here if we could, some other things like that. I'm curious, Tom, just as an aside here, this is great, at being able to go in here and just create them via upload. Is there the ability to update via upload as well, or is it more through the UI?
I
I'm
think
just
I
curious, like if we had a bunch that we wanted to change, say the AP netting date
modify.
on, or something like that.
I think for that, I would say if there's a bulk of them, I would probably
Mhm.
say, well, let's work with that in SQL, right? Versus trying to do it one v
So
one.
basically script it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
I mean, you can certainly do it through the UI, but
Mm, right.
I can ask Flexi, but I'm not aware of a upload to make modifications because I think
Modification.
it'll dupe out. It'll say this
Yeah.
invoice already exists.
Right.
But
Right.
I'm gonna write myself a note here, and I will follow up with Flexi and ask that question.
All right. That would be great. Yeah, yeah, and we can definitely, through DDI, if there are other items, that the recovery division may want to discuss in terms of having, kind of like a standard script, that we can just provide you with information and you guys run.
Yep,
We can definitely do that as well.
perfect.
Um, okay, great. And Sean, and if Marie's on at this point, Chris, you guys feel free to jump in here. Um, or correct me if I say anything that is out of my wheelhouse.
Sure, thank you.
Very good.
All right. The next two, Maria, if you just want to pull up the questions. I don't have anything to demo for the next two, but let's talk about them. Number 2 for AR, ability to net against receivables proportionally by line instead of sequentially. what I think you mean by this, Natalie, correct me if I'm wrong. So and I'll just talk about a simple example. You have you've got a receivable with 3 lines of distribution, right? $100 on each line, and you've got a $100 payment. I think what your question here is, do I need to allocate all 100 of the AP funds to the first line of distribution, or can I do it proportionally and apply $33 to each of those 3 lines of distribution? Am I on the right
Yes.
track?
You are.
Okay, so that's proportionate versus waterfall, and Flexi set report still today is a waterfall approach. So it'll be just like you experienced today. So if you have, in that exact scenario, if you have $100 in payments, it's going to apply to that top line of distribution until that is completely satisfied, settled, and then it'll move on to the next line of distribution. So it's a header level waterfall distribution.
Thank you.
No problem. The next one, question number 3, ability to turn on and off netting for a group of AR invoices in aggregate. I feel your pain here. I've experienced this in other accounts. There's no great way to do it through the UI at a bulk level. But what you can do is SQL script. So we can provide that. You plug in your customer IDs and you just put, these customers or these invoices on hold. That's certainly no problem. And that's something that we can do easily with SQL. There's just not a great way to do it on the UI. But what I will say is, if that's something that you think is going to be really useful in the future, and I talked to Cindy a little bit about this yesterday, what we could do is develop a new screen in View 360, because this is a pretty simple SQL statement, and anytime it's a simple SQL statement, we can make a screen in View 360 to do that, right? So we could design that screen for you. I just need to talk more with Cindy, but what I would say is that would require a change request. That's not part of our functionality that comes out of the box. We could provide a SQL statement. That's easy. But if you wanted to maybe get a new screen that says, I want to be able to put invoices on hold, whether it be AP or AR, that's certainly an enhancement request that I think we would entertain, because I think there's maybe a need for this outside of Maine as well.
Oh, very good. That's extremely interesting. That's great.
Right. Any other questions on that? All right.
Recovery?
Next one.
Anything from recovery? I just don't want to lose you guys.
Still here, thanks.
All good? Okay. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Question number 4, ability to offset specific dollar amount per month. So I think what you're asking, Natalie, is rather than a percentage based. So for ARs, when we talk about payment terms or payment plans, the way Flexi works is it allows you to create your own payment plan, and you can have 5 payment plans or 1,000 payment plans. There's no limit, but it is percentage based. So if it's a 6-month payment plan for this particular AR, and it's a $600 receivable, 6-month payment plan. If you want to take $100 a month, then you'd have to work out the math with the percentage to do that, right? What I think you're asking for here is there a way to take back a certain dollar amount, whether it be per week or per month? Is that the ask?
Yes. Yes.
So
And I believe there is the ability per week currently, because you can specify, instead of, percentage based, you can say dollar based.
correct.
But I believe it's per week. I don't know that there's an option for doing it per month.
Yeah. So Paula, can you pull up the UI and let's just go into our terms and let's kind of talk about it. So in Flexi, you've got your AR terms, which is what you're probably used to using and what our other customers are used to using. But we also have withholding certificates I want to talk about in a minute, just to kind of give you maybe another option. We use withholding certificates for more of, think of it as lien functionality, so to kind of reroute money from, say, the provider to either the state of Maine or to the IRS if there's a lien against them. But we'll touch on that in a minute. So let's first talk about our terms. So here is where a user, if they have permissions, could set up a new AR term, right? And this is where you define it, and these are the settings that are allowed to you, right? So you have discount days, you have grace days, frequency, you have that drop down there, number of periods, and what day of the period you want to recoup the funds. So these are the kind of out of the box functions or parameters that you can use to create a payment plan. Now you can kind of back into this, right, and on a percentage based and say, if I want to recoup $10 a month for the next 10 months, well, then you can kind of just do the math and use that as a percentage, right? And like I said, there are no limit on the number of terms you can use. So if you hit the binoculars, Paula, there in our demo environment, we've got a number that are already set up here if you want to just grab one. So let's just grab the 24-month payment plan maybe. But these are fully configurable, and you can add new ones at any time. So here you can see this is our 24-month payment plan. So when an AR is set up, whether you're doing it through the UI or through that upload, you would put in the key of the term rule 24 MPP, and that would be our cue to assign this payment plan to that particular receivable. Right, and right now it's looking at a full recoupment. You can see the radio button there on the bottom right. But if you want to do percentage of payment, so if you want to take it easy on the provider, and maybe it's a smaller provider who only has $500 worth of business per week, and you don't want to recoup their entire $500 payment, you could say I'm only going to withhold 50% of their payment. So if they've got a $500 payment this week, I can only recoup $250. So that is our AR terms for our payment plans, but wanted to also just quickly touch on withholding certificates. Like I said, it may work for you, may not, but let's talk about it. So withholding certificates, like I said, primarily used for lien functionality, but it does give you a little bit more flexibility if you want to use it. You could basically set yourself up, the state of Maine, as the lien holder. But just want to kind of show you what these options are. So you can see here, kind of in the middle of the screen, you have your withhold limits. So this is where you could define a certain amount and when you want to withhold it. So I want to withhold it every week or every month or bi-monthly. You can do a percentage. So again, this is not true payment plan functionality, because what this is, you'll see there's multiple tabs. This is where you set up the withholding certificate, but you see at the top, there's the remit to assignment. So this is basically where Flexi is rerouting the money. That's why I say we use this for lien functionality. So at a high level, it's creating an AR, right, and also creating an AP to the lien holder at the same time. So again, it may work for you depending on the scenario, maybe not. But if you want to set yourself up as that lien holder, you could then use a withholding certificate for any of these customers in the system. And it just gives you a few more selection parameters to use if you're trying to recoup money a certain way, right? A little more flexibility, I'll say, than maybe the payment terms on the AR side. So it's something to keep in your back pocket if you wanted to use it, but certainly not a requirement. Any questions on our AR terms or withholding certificates? All right, moving on to.
I just
Oh.
have to say I didn't fully understand that.
Okay, no, you don't.
But that's okay. I don't necessarily need to.
Natalie, I think what that is, say for example, Maine Revenue Service has a hold on somebody in the accounting system, and I think we've seen this with providers before.
Yeah.
We've had providers call, hey, how come I didn't get my whole payment? Well, because Maine Revenue Service basically took this money out of your payment, essentially. So I think that's more or less what it's getting to. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I kind of understand the logistics, I think, of what the holding certificate does, and this kind of gives us more options, I guess, from the withhold every monthly, bi-monthly, right? It sounds like the payment plan under individual invoices in terms of the term. There are a few less options, right,
Correct.
Tom? Like there's
Correct.
really just monthly and percentage.
Correct.
Is there weekly? I thought there was weekly, but maybe not.
Not
in
on
the
the AR
terms.
terms.
Not in terms, so it's only monthly. Okay.
Correct.
How does it know which week to recoup in?
I think it just starts when based off of the AR start date. So it'll try,
Okay.
you know, it'll be different for every AR. It's not like it's going to be the 15th of the month for every AR. It'll be different based off of the effective date.
Okay, so there's an effective date on that one. And for
Yeah.
each AR, depending on the effective date, it kind of starts then and says, okay, I'm going to recoup now, and then I'm going to
Correct.
wait a month and recoup
Correct.
again.
Correct.
Oh,
And
okay.
you can
That's how that works.
actually,
Okay.
in the terms, you can actually say what day of the month.
Yeah.
So if you want it the 15th, you put it in the 15th. And so anytime you run a cycle
Oh,
that is either on or after the 15th and it hasn't recouped yet for that month, it will recoup.
Yep. If you go back to that,
okay.
can you go back to that screen real quick? The terms, it's that should be
Sure.
day of period, I think is what they could describe it as. And I love the search selection criteria.
Yeah, me too.
for those that-
I'm all about it.
So you can see day of period right there, kind of on the bottom right there. So you can decide which day you want it to recoup, but the default is just the effective date.
And if you look at the one we were looking at previously, I think it was on the 1st. See?
Yep.
The first day of the period.
Interesting. Okay. And did you say it's the effective date? Does that mean AP netting start date?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yep, you
Okay.
got it.
Thank you.
problem.
And with this one, it's 24 months payment plan. If we say full recoupment, does that mean it's breaking up the invoice total by 24 and recoups that
I
every
believe
month?
so, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. All
Cool.
right. The last question, I think, on the AR side, ability to specify account coding and invoice when processing an invoice refund in FlexiEP. So today, Natalie, when you want to refund cash, correct me if I'm wrong, you unapply the cash and then refund the cash. Is that the steps you follow?
Ability to specify. Sean?
Yes,
So that's how it works in Flexi
I'm sorry.
6.3.
That wasn't an answer to a question. I was asking what the question was.
Oh, sorry. So my follow-up to the question is in terms of refunding cash today. So provider sends in cash, we want to refund it. But the cash has already been applied to an invoice. The steps that you do today, is it unapply the cash receipt and then refund the cash receipt? Are those the steps that you follow? Or are you
Yes, I
not
think
doing
it
it today?
is.
Okay.
Yep, I think that is it.
That's what I thought, and I just wanted to confirm it. So that's exactly how it works in Flexi 6.3 as well. There's no quote unquote shortcut to just refund the cash. Step one, you've got to unapply a cash, which basically puts that cash, back where it came from, and then you can issue a refund. So the steps would be the same with this upgrade.
Yeah. So Tom, there's another process that recovery goes through to refund, and it's actually them they basically create an AP invoice within the AR module, which is
Yes,
basically just a negative AR
correct.
invoice. And then they process what's referred to as an invoice refund. So with this one, we were curious because right now our steps are kind of multiple in order to get the invoice to refund the way we want it to. And it's when they process the invoice refund, there's a default account string.
A
I
clearing account.
believe, it's kind of like the credit memo that is automatically created.
Yes,
But we were curious because we very, very likely do not want that to be the coding on the invoice refund in AP. We want to apply, multiple account strings. And sometimes we don't actually know what those account strings are until we refund because FMAP rate updates, stuff like that.
sure.
And so we were curious because right now we have to invoice refund. It creates an AP payable. It uses kind of this default or kind of like specified default account string to create that invoice. And then they have to go in and adjust the invoice to actually apply the account strings that they want. So I was curious if in the new version, if there's the option, to bypass that default account string and actually enter the account string at the time of refund.
So for that one, I'm going to take a action item for myself to follow up with Flexi, because what you're referring to is a clearing account, and I know that's what they
Yes.
use today
That's right. Yeah.
to issue that refund. And I checked it, yesterday, just playing around with it, and we still use that clearing account. But let me ask Flexi to see if that could be overwritten. But it sounds like you're not going to want the same account every single time you issue these refunds. It's going to vary, right? And it'll be a business decision as to what account you want to use. Is that a correct statement?
I would say likely. Sean, would you guys say that, more often than not, you guys are actually entering the account strings after the fact?
I'll have to check. I'm not.
If
sure.
you don't mind, I'm going to jump in and say yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's what that is what I thought. So yeah. So I definitely think having the ability to just enter it from that same screen might save us a little bit of time. The other thing, Tom, that we have to, and I said end invoice when processing an invoice. I think I meant invoice reason code. I apologize. I think I missed some words in that question. So basically ability to specify account coding and invoice reason code. Because right now, those are the two things that AP basically, or I'm sorry, that recovery has to go into AP after they have created the invoice refund to enter.
Got it.
Because they don't automatically enter, or they don't give us the option when we create the invoice refund to specify them. So yeah, so just curious about that, because we can't process an invoice without I'm sorry, I said a invoice reason code. I think you guys used reason code interchangeably between AR and AP, but what I
Right.
mean is AP invoice type or reason code.
Yep, I'm with you.
Yes, thank
All
you.
I have
And make
made
that
a
more
note.
specific.
No, you're good. And I'll reach out to Flexi to see if that's a possibility. I'm not sure, but
Okay.
I've taken that action to follow up.
Very good. Thank you.
I'm wondering if, just spitballing, a possible workaround is for the refund itself, if we try to leverage our AP import. Obviously, it would require some code changes, but I wonder if that'd be a better fit, because then you could define the account code, you can define the AP reason code. Just got to figure out if that would actually work or not. But
Yeah, because if you're using the refund invoice or refund cash receipt, it automatically
already
queues up the
creates-
AP.
Right.
And yeah, and the reason it uses the suspense is because all it's doing is it's debiting your AR, right?
Yep.
And crediting your liability account, or vice versa.
Right, I'm with you. Okay, I've got an action to follow up on that one.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
moving on. I think we're through AP, through AR now. I think there's 3 questions that were taken as part of the demo last week. First one, regarding showing audit trail. If the audit trail is exportable to see all the postings for a certain period and who created it. And there's nothing through, there's a report on the UI, but I don't think it's what you're looking for, Natalie. So what I would say is we just need to create an ad hoc report for you guys. So if you want to see an audit trail of anybody that touched an AP invoice or a cash receipt or a receivable, right? The audit tracking is there, right? And it is in the back end on the tables, right? And we can, provide either SQL or, produce an ad hoc report. But that's what it would take to meet that question.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. But it is there, right? Every
Please, thank you.
mouse click is tracked on
Yeah.
the Flexi database, right? It's just how do we report it and illustrate that to you guys.
Very good. Thank you.
Number 2, is a state able to refund cash receipts that are fully applied? Yes, but you just have to go through that same process that you did today, where you'd have to unapply the cash first and then issue the refund.
And one of the reasons for that is that the way that the system's designed, it will allow you to refund only a portion of a cash receipt. So let's say a cash receipt is only partially applied because for whatever reason they sent you $100 more than was owed. And so you have $100 unapplied cash. If you go into refund cash receipt, it will select that $100 and not try to refund the whole amount that, you know, included the portion that they really owed. So it wants you to unapply so that it resets the unapplied cash to the full amount of that cash receipt. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, and the last one, I think is a two-parter. Will the state have direct ability to create, modify, delete AR reason codes without adversely impacting RAs and 835s? So I think you know the answer to the first part of this question, Natalie, is yes, you have ability, assuming you have permissions to do so in Flexi. You can create, modify, or delete reason codes in the system. That's no problem. If you have the access to do it, you can do it. All right, and Paul, if you want to show the section of Flexi for maybe those that don't know where that is, you can show that real quick. But in terms of without adversely impacting the RA or 835, there will be an impact, right? So that's where we need to work with the EDI team or the reporting team, because if you're adding or modifying a reason code that you're expecting to go on the RA or 835, we need to work with those teams to make sure that it's part of their code. It's easy to make the change in the UI, right? But that doesn't necessarily feed to the 835 and the RA. Does that make sense, Natalie?
Right. Yes. Yes. Because it was my understanding that the 835, well, I'm not sure that reason codes are even on the 835, but at least the RA is, you know, that they were hard coded
Yep.
into that.
Yep.
So I was curious, you know, if, you know, there's the opportunity during DDI to kind of unhard code that so that it just uses what's there.
Right.
You know, because the information is all there, the code, the description, the information, you know, it was just kind of curious, you know, if there was an opportunity to kind of make that process a little bit easier. Because right now it's like a whole thing
Change
to
requests and
create
all.
any invoice type, any reason code, you know, it's got to go through a whole bunch. It takes a long time
Sure.
to actually, you know, get one of those in. But if it were much easier, you know, in terms of, you know, being able to just create through the UI and then just have it automatically populate, you know, that would be awesome. So that was kind of because part of the demo that was done in the original demonstration for this, one of the focuses of the demo was to look at creating reason codes and invoice types. And I was like, well, if the state can't do that on our side because, you know, it's going to impact the RA, then that's not really a functionality we should expect to have ultimately.
Yeah, and I think for that one, Maria or Rachel, if we could maybe just take a question, or and I think it would be to the reporting team of the RA team, and just say, is that, you know, part of the upgrade, is that reason code still hard coded, or can it be fluid? Can it read from the reason codes that are configured in Flexi and be nimble, I guess, for lack of a better
Yeah.
description? I think
Yeah,
that's
that'd be
Natalie's
great.
question, but I'm not able to answer it. But I think if we get someone from the RA team or reporting team, they might be able to answer that.
Very good. Yes, I like I I like the word nimble on that one.
All right, well, we got 20 minutes. I think we've gone through all the questions. So Maria, I'll turn it back to you to close us out.
Maria, do we have any more slides to cover? I know Mohammed had to step away for a meeting.
No, we did not.
Okay. So, well, thank you for having this session. I think it was a good discussion. And are there any other questions before we close out the call?
Yes, hi, this is Sean. I do have one other question. I'm not sure. I don't think it's been asked yet, but just in case there were some meetings that we had last year, I think with state audit, on some concerns about the ability of, these are permission concerns, like the ability of one person to be able to go into the Flexi module and set up a payable and then actually go into the payables module and make the post the payment. So I think the concern there is that one person could go into the system and make a payment without going through any approval process. And I'm wondering if any of the upcoming enhancements are going to address this.
I don't think we've talked about that question yet, but I can try to address that. So I mean, there are security permissions within Flexi, but if you have the ability to post an invoice, then you have the ability to post an invoice, whether you know, you created the invoice or not. But it is a good question, right? And probably something that I need to talk to Flexi about to see if they can do something to address that, to remove the ability for a user to not only enter an invoice, but also post that invoice, right? Because I do think that there's some validity behind that. I think that's smart. So let me follow up with them to see if that's part of 6.3. I don't believe that it is, but maybe they can put it on the radar for, you know, 6.5 or 6.6.
You're talking about a single individual though, right, Sean? Because I mean, it does allow for, you know, if you have multiple individuals involved in the process, they would each have different permissions. So let's say I'm the person that enters the invoices, I can be excluded from actually posting or approving. So there's 3 steps. Well, 3 steps. You can create. There's somebody that can come in behind you and look at that and say, yes, this makes sense. I agree. And it's called verify. And then you can have a third person who, let's say, is the manager who has ultimate oversight, who says, okay, you know, this totally is accurate. It's correct. I'm going to approve and post. So, but right now, I think the way you have it is that the same person can do all of that. And I believe what the audit finding was they wanted the individual to be able to add and maybe verify and approve, but only approve and post if it wasn't an invoice that they originally created. Is that correct? Is that the crux of the question?
I think so. I think the concern is for someone to maybe with nefarious intentions to be able to go into the system and just set up a payment and post it and send it. Maybe putting in their own coding that they decide on. But yeah, I think that was the concern.
Right. And so you can separate that if you have sufficient staff. But if you're trying to have the same person only be able to approve and post certain invoices, that is what we've got to go to Flexi with.
Right. Yeah. So is the system able to see that, oh, this person created the invoice, so it shouldn't allow them to also post it. Otherwise, where we have a very small team, we would have to, you know, limit some people from being able to have certain functions on our side.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we'll take that one back to the team and come back with an answer. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much for joining the call and appreciate it, and everybody have a great day.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Bye.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Bye.